Hey, good afternoon, folks. Carl Rominger here with Weekend Appointment. The talk line number is 540-0580. It's 540-0580. If you have a legal question, a legal concern, you want to talk to us about a problem you're experiencing, you think you might have, or how to plan for the future with your legal needs, you call 540-0580. And, of course, throughout the week, you go to weekendappointment.com. That's weekendappointment, 2 words.com. And you post your legal question there, and if you become a registered user, you can get a free will. That's a no-cost will. You go to weekendappointment.com and you register there. You also post, like I say, throughout the week, your legal questions. I had a really good one here. Who is responsible for the repair of my 6-foot privacy wooden fence that is being pushed up by my neighbor's tree root? The neighbor or myself? I want to know some facts before I confront him. Thank you. And I answered it, but I didn't give an answer. I cited a case. I wasn't sure about that one. And the case I put up comes out of Delaware County, Pennsylvania from 1986, and it seems to be the law of the matter. And the answer is it's nobody's fault. It's the tree's fault. And if it's the natural condition of the neighbor's land and the tree root is a natural phenomenon, it's nobody's fault, and it's not your neighbor's fault, so it's your problem to deal with on your own. At least that's what the case seems to say. But I encourage folks to go to weekendappointment.com and look that question up. The question being, it's entitled Tree Root, and it's in the miscellaneous legal topics section. I strongly urge you to read it because that'll help you understand how courts come to the conclusions they do. And it's a good example of an opinion where the court says, well, there's nothing quite like it out there before this, but let's analogize it to some other issues and see what we come up with. So go to weekendappointment.com, look up the tree root question. It's also in the email that I sent to all our registered users today, reminding you about the show. So if you got the email, you can go to your email, you can pop it up and click through very easily. Alan, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. My talk line number is 540-0580. What's going on, Alan?
Well, right now I live in a condo association, and we have a road that runs through it that they built 22 years ago and turned over to the township.
Okay.
And we have a very strict rule in the association that no one can park a mobile home on the street in front of their unit.
Okay.
Well, we have somebody doing that. And the township has a rule. They categorize streets, and this street is categorized one that you can park a mobile home on, but you can't park a trailer that is pulled by a truck.
Okay.
And my attitude is that we cannot do something that is more severe than the township. For example, we can't say you're allowed to park a tractor trailer here.
Well,
but in this case, we're restricting below the township level, and we have 2 penalties. We can fine $50 a day, or we can, if it's a lease, we can go in and break the lease on behalf of the leaseholder.
Right. Well, the answer is, I guess what you're asking is, can you enforce your rules? And I don't think it matters whether it's a township road or not. Now, here's the issue. If I bring my camper over there and park on the public road, probably nothing you can do about it, right? It's a registered vehicle. It's on a public road running through. Right. On the other hand, if I'm a resident, I am subject to the terms and covenants of the agreements that I agreed to at closing, which are your rules, and any changes and amendments to your rules that are done by the proper homeowner's procedures. So you can absolutely enforce your rules.
Thank you for the information.
Go get them, Alan.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Homeowners associations, folks, remember that. When you sign up and join into a homeowners association, you're going to be bound by the rules of that association, and the township has nothing to do with that. That's a private agreement between the landowners and the purchase of the house. You sign that the acknowledgement of the rules, or you took it subject to the recorded rules and easements, you're stuck. So yeah, that fella can absolutely enforce those. Remember, the talk line number is 540-0580. If you have a legal question, you call us. We'll answer it here on the air. If throughout the week you need an attorney, you think you need an attorney, I have a general practice. We service the mid-state, and you go to weekendappointment.com where you can find our contact information. I got a status report on one of our posted questions here, where somebody had complained about sending some money to somebody and not getting the service they wanted and getting blown off by them. We suggested that they file a complaint or threaten a private lawsuit. And they followed some of my general advice, which is send a registered letter or send a letter, and they tell us they received a full refund. So, folks, remember that. If you have a dispute with somebody, you can call till you're blue in the face and complain, but put it in writing. That's proof of when you did it. Keep a copy of it. Send it return receipt requested. Get a copy of that green card, staple it to the copy of the letter you have, and then later on the other person says, well, I didn't know he had a problem with anything. Well, no, that's there. Also had another really interesting question this week. The statutes of limitations and discovery rule. There, somebody had drilled a well in 2001. They just discovered a problem with the well, and it's going to cost them $12,000 to fix it, and they want to know if the statute of limitations is over. And the answer is no, because the discovery rule, then, and they were correct in thinking that was an issue here. It's when you realize the problem occurred. Now, here's the issue. Sometimes the other side will argue you should have discovered it sooner. So you've got to bring your legal claim as quickly as possible when you realize you have one, and get to see a lawyer. Go see a lawyer immediately so you can find out whether or not there is one. And there's another little thing out there called the statute of repose, which means sometimes after a certain period of time you can't bring a claim at all. So for construction projects, and I've posted the statute on Weekend Appointment and answered that question, there's a 12-year statute of repose where you can't recover damages after 12 years. For any deficiency in the design, planning, supervision, or observation of the construction or construction of the improvement. So you got to discover it within 12 years. That's to protect contractors so you don't get sued for something you did 30 years ago. You have this repose, which will cut off your limitations in the future, even if they're never discovered or latent. So if you think you have a legal claim because somebody did something wrong in terms of construction, you've only discovered it recently, you got to see a lawyer right away to make sure you're within the discovery period and that you're also not going to be exempted from a court action by the statute of repose, which stands at 12 years. And remembering that those limitations are sometimes hard and firm and sometimes not, you should always assume that they are hard and fast when you're trying to decide how quickly you should act until you're told otherwise by your legal professional. What else did we have on Weekend Appointment? We had a lot of good questions this week. I have a joint account with someone. Is it legal to close the account without his or her permission? The answer is that depends on what your banking agreement is. If you have an agreement with the bank and you both sign it for a joint account, it's going to say under what conditions can it be canceled or closed. Interestingly, remember, if you put your money in a joint account with me, and it's a true joint account and I can remove all the money, I might not be able to close the account, but I can leave everything but a buck in there, and then you'll be without your money, and the account will still be open. So, but as for closing joint accounts, joint investment accounts, things like that, you need to look at the bank or agreement with whoever you're holding the account with, which is what you usually signed at the beginning. You should have a copy of that. If you don't, as a joint account holder, you're obviously going to have a right to collect that. Again, the talk line number is 540-0580, 540-0580. We're going to go to break here now. When we get back from the ads, we'll take some more calls, 540-0580. Hey, welcome back. Carl Rominger here. The show's Weekend Appointment, show where I answer your legal questions. If you have one, call in, 540-0580. It is a wonderful life, Shane. 540-0580. John, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. What's your question?
When I was 19, I was involved in as an accomplice in an armed robbery, and I was wondering I'm now 33, I was wondering if there's any way to restore my gun rights.
I assume you're convicted with a felony of some sort?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. Restoration of gun rights is turned out to be a huge boondoggle. Pennsylvania has a sort of a restoration statute. One half of the restoration statute talks to crimes that were formerly something and are now something else. Most people fall under a different subsection, which is the lifting of the prohibition if you're more than 10 years post. The federal government does not accept that as a lifting or a true restoration of civil rights for purposes of the federal gun laws. So right now, as a felon not to possess in Pennsylvania, you're prohibited from having any kind of firearm. What I could do is get a restoration of your firearm rights in Pennsylvania, so to speak, by lifting the prohibition, and then you can use muzzle loaders because the federal law exempts black powder weapons, but the Pennsylvania law does not. So we could get you back to black powder. And I don't know if you've shot any modern black powder weapons recently, which I know you haven't because you couldn't. But if you had or know somebody that did, you would know that the modern inlines and things like that are pretty comparable to a lot of center fire weapons for hunting purposes. So while you only get one shot, it's not such a bad position to be in if you want to go deer hunting.
Sure.
So you could get to that stage. Then to get the federal prohibition lifted, we'd have to get Congress to fund the ATF because they're supposed to be restoring your firearms rights at the federal level, but Congress refuses to fund it. And the courts have sort of said, well, there's nothing we can do about that, so you can't get it back. So as it stands right now, it's virtually impossible, best we can tell, although nobody's completely tangled with the ATF on what's called a mandamus, and I'm not sure if there's any results on that yet or not. But at least as it looks right now, you could get Pennsylvania back very tough on the federal. Something needs to be done on the legislative end there.
Well, how do I go about getting the Pennsylvania prohibition lifted?
Well, what we would do is we would file a petition for restoration of the privileges or to lift the prohibition under a certain statute, and we do that in the common pleas court in the county where you reside.
Okay.
All right, John?
All right, thank you.
All right, and by the way, you go to weekendappointment.com, you find my contact information. I do know how to do those petitions.
Sounds great.
All right, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's tough right now if you've got a crime in Pennsylvania and it's been years. Remember, that's why you got to fight early and often in the crimes, folks. If you get charged with something, accused of something, if you didn't do it, don't plead guilty. If you did it, be careful about pleading guilty because you have all kinds of collateral consequences. Let the lawyer work out the best for you. And if you currently have a lawyer and you're working on a criminal matter, ask him or her if he knows what the collateral consequences of the conviction are. I go nutty because all these defense attorneys out there go, oh, I didn't know that would remove his gun rights. I thought the misdemeanor 3. I'm like, yeah, it's a Lautenberger Amendment. You ever hear of that? Robert, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. Robert?
Oh, yes, Mr. Rominger. Listen, I have a sibling in Pittsburgh that I said I would call you. I appreciate your program, but she's filing bankruptcy.
Okay.
Now, I filed bankruptcy. I came from California 25 years ago, and I had a bad real estate situation there. And I filed bankruptcy, paid the attorney, I think, $550, and that was the end of it. But she told me that she used her last $500 and some to pay the attorney, and now that the court wants $800 to proceed with the bankruptcy. And I thought, why was it not then and is now?
What was the question? Why is it?
The question is, what is the $800 for now? They didn't ask for that before.
Well, I don't know what kind of bankruptcy she's filing.
It's personal.
Yeah, but is it a 7 or a 13?
I can't answer that.
Yeah. 7s are done on a flat rate, and there's filing fees involved. If it's a 13, the fees are set by the court, and the court might want money for certain things. I don't know if that's for attorney's fees that they want the money for, administrative costs.
She broke herself just paying the attorney, and how did she pay the $800? That's the situation. I had never heard of that. I don't know everything or much.
What I would tell her to do is consult with another bankruptcy attorney for a second opinion out there. Everything's local, if that makes sense, and that is the Western District of Pennsylvania Bankruptcy Court. And I don't know what fees they charge out there. But it sounds like she's trying to file a 7, and perhaps she's $500 into the attorney. But I would guess, and maybe she needs to really look at this, but usually Chapter 7s run around $1,000 plus the filing fees, and if I'm adding $800 and $500 together, I'm getting $1,300, which sounds suspiciously like the filing fee plus the $1,000 fee that most attorneys charge.
The reason I was confused, it didn't exist with me when I had to file 25 years ago.
Well, two things. Number one, the bankruptcy laws probably changed at least twice in that time period. Number two, every court has different filing fees. In California, the federal courts in California are not the same as the federal.
I filed against my credit cards I used to support me,
Okay, and you filed in what, the Middle District of Pennsylvania 25 years ago?
And in the York area.
Yeah. So different court, different fees, and things have changed a lot in 25 years, Robert.
Okay,
but 13 $1,300 sounds about right because it's probably a $290 filing fee plus a $1,000 attorney fee. That sounds right to me.
Okay, I'll relate that to her. And listen, I really appreciate your service you're putting out to people.
Hey, thank you very much, Robert. Just be sure and send people to weekendappointment.com if they need it.
Okay, Carl.
All right, thanks.
You have a good day.
Thank you. Folks, talk line is 540-0580. This show is Weekend Appointment. I'm Carl Rominger. I'm an attorney. I answer your legal questions. And those of you who listen for the whole hour, and I know that there's two of you that do, you might wonder why I repeat who I am once in a while. But, sometimes you jump in the car and you like to know who you're talking to. Jerry, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. What's your question?
Is this Jerry?
Jerry, yeah. Well, I don't know. Are you Jerry?
Yeah.
Okay, it's you, Jerry.
Thank you, attorney. After giving over to a sheriff's sale in 2008 because missing some medical bill payments, we were approached by two women who saw it in the paper, and they represented another woman who runs a real estate company. And she offered us a 1-year loan on our property and house while they cleared up our credit. And supposedly at the end of the 1-year refinance, we could get a normal home mortgage.
Okay.
Now, at the end of this 1-year finance and not missing any payments and getting our bills, our credit score better, we found out that they had sold our home. One of the partners sold my house to his brother. We were contacted by the FBI, and it's under investigation, and they referred us to another attorney office in Carlisle.
Okay.
And the woman told us that that the FBI was telling people to go to her. She's filing a class action suit. And what I'm wondering is a class action suit, would it be to my advantage to get my own lawyer instead of getting a class action suit?
Well, and Jerry, let me give you an example. People get these things in the mail, and it says you can opt out of the class, and if you opt out of the class, you can bring your own claim and go through your own lawyer. And sometimes people bring them into me and say, well, Carl, what should I do? And the answer is it all depends. You probably could go see another lawyer and get a second opinion on your private cause of action. The advantage of a class action is it allows a lot of people to share the expense of one lawsuit, basically.
Yeah.
And sometimes the recovery is as good as or better than you would get on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Other times, and I think of a time I had a guy come into me and he says, hey, I got this notice of a class action against this insurance company, and I'd bought some policies from them. And it says here that if I take option A, I can get a free year of insurance. And if I take option B, I can get a discount, of 20% forever on my insurance. It says I can take option C. I go to a board of arbitrators and get some other relief as applicable. And I said, well, do you still have the policies? And he says, no, I don't. I had one of them still, but I don't really care about it. It's not that valuable. I said, well, circle option C and let it go to arbitration and see what you get. Well, I think he ended up getting like $40,000. And I kind of chuckled because it was funny because, at one level, you could have taken a little discount or a free policy or something like this. But if you opt for C, you spin the wheel, the big wheel, and sometimes it comes up on bankrupt, and sometimes it comes up apparently on $40,000. So I don't know what to tell you. I was
wondering if maybe I could. I have a UAW legal plan, and they paid for a consultation.
Right.
And I don't know if you've ever worked with them before, but they're really good. I mean, they just pay right away, whatever your fee is.
Well, Jerry, if I
could make an appointment to talk to you about this a little more in detail.
Yeah, Jerry, you got a pen on you?
Yes, I do.
My office phone number is 241
Okay.
6070.
Okay.
Yeah, call me there. Let whoever answers, one of the nice ladies that answers the phone, you tell them you talk to me on the radio. Make an appointment, come in and see me. And I do Sunday afternoon appointments.
Why can't you come in? Could I get a phone consultation?
Yeah, absolutely, Jerry.
Okay.
Absolutely. In fact, I sometimes tell people phone consultation is a good way to go. The other thing is we do Sunday afternoons because sometimes people can't get in any other day. So
Oh, okay.
Okay?
And I'll get a case number then from the UAW. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, fine.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Jerry, thank you very, very much.
And I like your show.
Hey, thank you.
And I do listen to the whole thing. Thank you.
All right. Well, I appreciate having a few listeners. I got to tell you, I've had a chance to meet a lot of you. Not all of you yet, but a lot of you, because people are signing up for the free will on weekendappointment.com. When they sign up for the free will, it gets sent to me. I go over it. I write you a will by hand. Jennifer in my office and I do every one of those and go over every one of those. Then I meet with you to make sure we got it right and make sure it's the right thing for you. Then sometimes we do living wills and we do powers of attorney, and then we go forward from there. But I've had a great opportunity to meet many of the listeners, and I really appreciate that. And it's a great way to do it. So make sure you sign up for the free will on weekendappointment.com. I'm happy to do those for you. Remember, the talk line number is 540-0580. I did have somebody put down, I'm currently in a 1-year rental agreement. However, I may need to relocate soon. What are my rights, responsibilities, and obligations in breaking a rental agreement? Well, you can't break an agreement without consequence. But theoretically, if you go to the landlord and you negotiate with the landlord and say, hey, I might have to move out. What do I do? Sometimes the landlord will say, well, I don't care. I don't need a tenant. That's very rare. Or the landlord might say, well, if you can find a new tenant so we don't miss any months of rent, I'll let them take over the remainder of your lease or even sign a longer lease with them and forgive you. Sometimes you just have to move out and keep paying the monthly rent with an understanding that the landlord's going to try to find a new tenant. Other times you can get a liquidation agreement. Well, you say to the landlord, listen, I'm moving out September 1. Would you take... Hey, let me finish this after the break, folks. 540-0580, and we'll talk about breaking a lease and take some more calls after the break. Hey, welcome back. Carl Rominger here. 540-0580, talk line number. Seth, you're on WHP 580. What's your question?
Yes, I was wondering about the 2010 census and whether or not I'd get into any trouble if I told them that I was, for the ethnicity question, if I told them that I was an American.
I don't think you get in any trouble. They might follow up with you and ask what you mean by that, and I think you're allowed to be whatever race you think you are. So as long as you answer the question, it might be other on the sheet, but nonetheless, I don't think you get any real trouble for that. However, we posted a long time ago the census law on weekendappointment.com, and it seems like theoretically there's like a $100 fine for willfully refusing to answer a question, but I don't think it says that that there's a right answer or a wrong answer.
Okay.
All right.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Well, I think Seth's just trying to make a point that he's an American and doesn't really matter what your race is. I kind of agree with that. We just had a golfer win. It was an Asian golfer win, and now they say it's the first Asian to win. And I said, that's interesting because last I checked, I thought Tiger Woods was half Thai. But what do I know? Sharon, you're on WHP 580.
Hi. I have a question for my son.
Okay.
His in-laws own their home plus 4 other properties, and last year they put a swimming pool up, and this year they went to put a swimming pool up, and his in-laws told him they couldn't do it because if anyone drowns in the pool, that they could be sued and lose all their property. Is that true?
Well, I guess it could possibly happen. Let me explain this. This pool thing drives me nutty. And let me tell you, though, more little kids die in accidental drownings every year than they do from accidental gun discharges. So while everybody sits in terrible fear of guns, pools kill more kids than anything else. I think I want to think under 5, it's like 100 or 200 kids a year. It's a ridiculously large number. But if you own a home, you should have something called homeowner's insurance, which will cover you for liability. So generally speaking, your homeowner's insurance policy will include, and you should talk to your insurance agent and say, yeah, I have a pool, and maybe I'd like a little extra coverage. So, $200,000, $500,000 in liability coverage on the pool. that usually would cover it. Now, you could say, well, yeah, but I have assets beyond that. If these people actually own 4 homes, and they actually, right, I would say, but they actually have some wealth of some sort.
Yes, they do.
And they don't hold what's called an umbrella policy, then they're idiots. And what I mean by that is, once you have some wealth, once you have some savings and a couple homes, things like that, you got to sit down with your insurance guy and say, hey, what am I going to do if somebody dies on my property and I'm somehow responsible? How much coverage do I need? And interestingly, when you buy one of these umbrella policies, it covers you above and beyond your auto insurance and your homeowner's policy. You can get millions of dollars of coverage very, very cheaply. And particularly if you're somebody who owns multiple homes and properties, when I say very, very cheaply, you'd be surprised at how inexpensive an umbrella policy really is. So the answer is, yeah, technically somebody could drown in the pool and there could be a lawsuit, but first there'd have to be negligence and the people would have to be greedy and want to go for more than the homeowner's insurance policy and still go after the people. But if they have an umbrella policy, which they should have if they're not idiots, I like to use that word for some reason.
Okay, I agree with you with the idiot part, but go ahead.
And, so if they don't have an umbrella policy, I always like to joke about this. People say, well, aren't you worried that somebody's going to slip on the ice in front of your office? And I say, we got $1 million in liability. Let them fall.
Yeah, let them.
And the answer is no. I mean, we go out there and chop it down and clean it up. But that's the point. That's why you carry insurance, and that's why any business has insurance. That's why anybody who has 2 sticks to rub together insures the 2 sticks and goes forward from there. But, yeah.
Well, if they have renter's insurance, since they are technically renting, that it would still come under his in-laws, the in-laws insurance.
Well, it depends who owns the pool. I mean, theoretically, if the lease is done right, then the liability should not be on the landlord. But then again, I would sit around in my office. I've done some wrongful death cases over the years, and I can tell you that one of the things I do whenever I have a wrongful death or any other kind of personal injury case is I sit around for hours and hours and hours researching and studying and trying to weasel around any possible defense somebody might have. So I can tell you, I mean, they're not completely crazy. A guy like me is going to sit around and go, okay, I can get the renter's insurance policy, but can I get to the landowner? How can I get to the landowner? And I will sit around and toy with that and look and look and look. And if I can find a way, I will. So, and we have. So they're not completely crazy when they're worried, but they are completely crazy if they don't have an umbrella insurance policy, so they don't have to worry about this stuff. It's like these guys. I like to fish, and over the years, I've asked for permission to fish in a lot of farm ponds, and most farmers say sure. But every once in a while, I get one that says, "We can't let anybody fish there because if they drown, we're going to get sued." No, you're not going to get drowned. You're not going to get sued because I drowned in your farm pond. You're going to get sued because some kid trespasses and drowns in your farm pond. But you're not going to get sued because you gave me permission to fish there. And by the way, you own a lot of land. You must have some kind of like homeowner's insurance policy on or general liability policy on all this land, right? Oh, anyhow, that's my answer for you is, yeah, they could put a swimming pool in. There's lots of ways to protect it, and they really shouldn't be a problem. But you're never going to make the irrational rational, so they're probably not going to get a swimming pool.
Yeah, I thought with the above-ground pool that it was not as technical as an in-ground pool, but
well,
I wasn't sure on it. But I guess if anyone gets hurt on your property, it doesn't matter what kind of pool it is.
Then the only question is whether there's negligence. So, classic example. The number one kid to drown in a pool, by the way, is not the neighbor's kids. It's your own kids, because here's what happens: mom's in the kitchen cooking dinner, and Johnny and Janie wander out to the pool, and one of them falls in. Somehow they drown. Little kids do that. So you got to keep it locked. You're supposed to have fencing, all this kind of stuff. And I even recall a case where one of the dogs in the household somehow managed to open the gate, because sometimes dogs do that sort of thing. And then the kids got into the pool, and one of them drowned. Very big tragedy, and it was horrible. But nonetheless, nobody plans this stuff. But usually, it's not when you have 10 people over and everybody's sitting around the pool that there's liability. It's usually when it's the family itself or the niece and nephew are over.
Right.
All right.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your information.
All right, and tell them, get a general liability policy and get an umbrella policy.
There you go.
All right, Sharon.
They won't have any more this year, but maybe if you check, and then maybe next year they can have it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Tom, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. My talk line number is 540-0580. Tom. Tom.
Yes, hi.
Yeah, you're on the air, Tom.
Very good. Hey, I have a question about a living will. I have a living will.
Okay.
I have a power of attorney.
Okay.
My son has it. He lives in the state closest to Pennsylvania. All my children live out of state.
Okay.
A copy of it is filed with my attorney. So my question is this. Let's say I have an incident at home. I live alone. I have a heart attack or an incident at home. I'm unconscious. The ambulance comes. I can at least make the call to 911. The ambulance comes to take me to the emergency room. How do they know I have a living will?
Yeah, they don't.
Okay.
And
then what good is the living will? I don't mean that in a bad way, but are they supposed? They're going to resuscitate me, I'm sure.
yeah, and the no resuscitation clause. Let me be clear about this. I mean, at least maybe you want it to be different, but here's my theory. If I fall off my bar stool and hit my head, I want them to try to resuscitate me and keep me alive. Now, if it turns out that I'm brain dead or in a permanent vegetative state, then go ahead and pull the plug, okay?
Right.
But here's the deal. Emergency responders are not going to look around to see what your wishes are. They're going to try to resuscitate and save you as best as possible, stabilize your medical condition, and then let a full-fledged doctor make a determination about brain activity and the like. So I don't want them to make a guess at the scene, so to speak. But here's what happens. Now you've been in a bad accident. They've got you hooked up to a respirator, and you're in a permanent vegetative state. Your son, your daughter, whoever can roll in, your attorney, and say, here's what his wishes were. And then what you've prevented is the big fight amongst all the family members because somebody's got a document. And then the hospital says, okay, it's clear, it's easy, so we'll go ahead and remove these things and do palliative care only.
Okay. Yep. That's more clear. And I wasn't like my doctor has a copy of it even, but I'm thinking it's that situation like you just described, an auto accident or something where nobody really knows. So what you're saying is they can then go forward at some point once the living will is disclosed and say, okay, his wishes were that he did not want to be, kept on life support or whatever. Right.
And that's going to be the biggest thing I think to remember is the way these things work is it's not going to be used in that initial flash and fury of a medical crisis. It's going to be used once things calm down. And, again, I'm sort of the mind like, you know what? I'd rather they wait a few days and just be sure that my brain's turned off.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Okay.
All right, Tom.
Because I've done everything right. I just wanted to know who would know it.
You've done it. You've done everything you can.
Okay.
Unless you want to tattoo it to your arm.
Right. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. WHP 580, Carl Rominger here. My talk line number is 540-0580. See you after the break. Welcome back. Carl Rominger here. Weekend appointment. Talk line number is 540-0580. Let's see who's been holding the longest. Rita, you've been patient. Rita.
Yes.
You're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
Hi. My question is about buying a vacant property, which is next to our house.
Okay.
Now, there was a development that went in behind our house.
And let me stop you for a second. When you say vacant, do you mean an empty lot or an abandoned house?
No, it's just a lot.
Okay, just an empty lot.
Right. So originally we were told when we bought our house that it was to be a right-of-way to that area. In the meantime, the big area was sold, and I think they forgot about this vacant property.
Okay.
But our neighbor and us have been taking care of it for 39 years. My husband mows it, puts fertilizer on it, takes care of it. So after this development was begun, we contacted the owner, which is this owner is in another state, has a lot of properties, and we had a contract to buy it, but he will not. Our lawyer said that because he is used to dealing in millions, he's not interested in selling this because it's in a trust, and he has to contact a lot of people.
Right.
So, I call at least 2 times a year to check to see, if anything has changed. My question is kind of if we should go ahead and put a building on there, like a shed or something, would that help at all? And, they say there's a 7-year.
You want to try to create a claim for adverse possession.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't counsel you to trespass on somebody else's land, right?
Right.
But I could tell you that, if you built something on it 7 years later, you might be able to make a claim that and I don't know, maybe you could even, here's what I would counsel you to do. Mm-hmm. I would not counsel you to trespass. What I would counsel you to do is say you've been taking care of it this many years.
Right.
File the adverse possession claim. Mm-hmm. Now, all of a sudden, it's going to get cheaper and easier to deal with you and just deed you over the property in exchange for some money because he's going to have to defend the lawsuit. Mm-hmm. That's what I would do.
Okay.
Do you see what I mean? That now you got the attention of the $1 million trust because they're going to be like, well, we can just, maybe they won't even bother. Maybe they just won't even defend.
Okay. I had checked on that before we made the offer,
Mm-hmm.
to buy it, and they had said unless we had a fence around it or a building on it, that
Yeah, I mean it's a very weak claim. But I don't know. You're going to wait another 7 years?
Well, we were told that nobody else would be able to buy it, but I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
So. Okay.
Yeah, because if you put a building on it and you're waiting your 7 years, you put your shed on it, somebody else could still buy it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I'd aggressively push the issue. But other than that, I don't know what to tell you to do because, if somebody owns property and they want to just sit on it, I guess they're allowed to.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right, Rita.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's what I would go after them. See, sometimes, folks, even if you have a legal claim that's weak, you can still settle it. It sounds like they just need to get this guy's attention. Although, again, I'm not counseling a lawsuit just to get people's attention because I don't think that's the right way to go. But here they might have a colorable legal claim for adverse possession. I think mowing the lawn for 30 years might get you there. Frank, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
Good afternoon, Carl. Is it possible that the person can put you in a class action suit against the company even if you don't want to?
Yeah, if you're a member of the class, in other words, you're part of the described class, they have to give you notice, but usually the notice consists of advertising as well as mailings, and then you're deemed to be a member of the class. So unless you opt out of the class, you are a member of the class.
Yeah, but I don't think that I should have to turn around and send all my information into this bird from California that opened a class up in New York.
Right, but you know what? Here's
because I own stock.
That's why some companies like to be sued in class actions. And people go, oh, these class action lawsuits. What they forget is a lot of times defendants are like, oh, no, please make it a class. Because once you make it a class and you do all the advertising and all the other rigmarole, I can cap liability because I can make sure that nobody else is going to weasel out of the woodwork later on.
So, I don't want to be included, but I don't want to send all my information out to this here guy in California.
Well, you're part of the class until you opt out.
Well, the only thing I can do is just leave it go through, and in case anything comes up, just refuse it. Yeah,
but you're still a member of the class, and all your other legal rights will be extinguished.
Even though I didn't sign nothing or didn't agree with nothing.
Right. You have to opt out of the class. That's just the law. I can't change the whole world for you. I can only tell you what it is.
Yeah, right.
So,
in order for me to get out of it, I have to send the information in.
You have to opt out, so they have to know who you are, yeah.
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 All right, thank you very much.
All right, Captain, no problem. Hey, what can I do, folks? I can't rewrite the law for Frank, you know what I mean? Did get an interesting question in on Weekend Appointment just a second ago. Talk line number, by the way, is 540-0580. Guy wants to know, should he stack his insurance, and what's the difference between stacked and unstacked? And remember, I still owe you all this report on insurance that's I'm dutifully working on. But short question, I'll answer it. Always get stacked. Stacked means you can stack up the multiple coverages for the automobiles you own. So if you own 3 cars and you get hurt in an accident and the other guy's uninsured or underinsured, and you have a $50,000 or $100,000 policy on each car, you get to stack them, meaning you get multiply the number of cars by your policy limit. We always recommend you take stacking. Do not waive stacking. You will give up important coverage that will be helpful to you later, and you'll find that waiving the stacking only saves you a small amount of money generally. Rick, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. Rick?
Hello.
Yeah,
hi, how are you doing?
Good.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm actually on the way back to Virginia from Buffalo now. My mother has passed away about 9 months ago, and my sister was put as executor in the will.
Okay.
And she basically has done nothing with the property. She did not. I mean, she's really not really doing her job. The lawyers keep calling us for information that she's supposed to be giving. But I had gone home and gotten okay from her to start do something with the house. I mean, that house was the same thing. All the furniture, everything was in that house since the day she died. So I've gotten everything out. And I'm a contractor in Virginia, and I used to be a contractor in New York. I'm a licensed contractor. I went in and got her estimates and had the flooring done, did carpets and tile, and ripped all the hardwood out and put a new dishwasher, anything that we needed to do because she wanted to fix it up and sell it instead of selling it as is, which everybody suggested to her. She wants to flip this house, I guess. I don't know. And now that all the work's done, she got in an argument with me, and now she's trying to get me to tear everything out of the house. I mean, I had no contract with her at a verbal agreement.
This happened in New York State. Am I catching that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, Rick, here's the caveat about the show. I'm a Pennsylvania attorney. I can only answer Pennsylvania questions because the law is different by state. Okay. But if you go to weekendappointment.com, in the upper right-hand corner, I have a legal match link. And anybody out there listening who has a legal question for a friend, relative, themselves, but it isn't Pennsylvania related, you go to legal match link in the upper right-hand corner. You click on there and follow the instructions there. Okay?
All right, can I just one thing? How hard is it to get somebody taking off as the executor of a will? It's a pretty hard situation.
In Pennsylvania, it's not simple, but we've done it many times.
Have you? Okay.
Yep. Can't answer out-of-state questions, folks. That's the short answer. Attorneys are licensed by state, for those of you who don't realize it. My family's all from New York, and I've avoided getting a New York law license, which I could get fairly easily at this stage in my practice, simply so that I can tell all my relatives, sorry, I can't help you. I'm a Pennsylvania attorney. Fortunately or unfortunately, my brother lives in Pennsylvania, so he gets some free legal advice from time to time. Again, back to that stacking. Make sure you always get stacked insurance. Make sure you are always full tort. If you're limited tort, tear it up and get a new policy. You may save a little money in the short run, but wait until you try to collect some money in an accident. Oh, boy. What else did I want to tell you, folks? Oh, we got somebody from Derry Township. He's upset because they have a leash law over there that's not very good. And he's very upset about that. He's been trying to change it. And he wanted to know if the township had any liability. And the answer is they have sovereign immunity, and they have a lot of protections against lawsuits. And if you go to Weekend Appointment, you can see the answer I posted, and I gave the sovereign immunity statute in full. And that's the music, so I have to go. Remember to go to weekendappointment.com, post your questions throughout the week. Remember to go there and get the free will. And remember to stop back every Saturday at 2 p.m. to get your questions answered on the air. And throughout the week, you can contact me in my office. We have 4 lawyers. We're happy to serve you. We practice throughout the mid-state region. So go to weekendappointment.com to get our contact information, and I will see you folks next week at 2.